Autistic people are known for being socially awkward or having social impairment. But what if the problem isn't autistic people, but the prejudice that they're facing? Too much blame is often put on neurodivergent people as a minority group when the trouble of socializing goes both ways. So this paper here is summarizing 3 different studies that are attempting to answer how much social prejudice is factoring into these social difficulties versus just innate social skills that autistic people have. The first of the 3 studies actually has a really interesting design. They recorded autistic people and neurotypical people auditioning for a fake reality TV show, broke it down into 5 different data points to answer a myriad of questions about first impressions. They broke it down into transcript only, video and audio only, video only, and still frame. And in all categories except for transcript only, autistic people were seen as less likable in knee-jerk reactions from strangers. Breaking it up into these 5 categories actually gives us a lot of really important information. On one hand, the transcript only was judged similarly between autistic and neurotypical peers, suggesting that the content of what autistic people are talking about is fine. But on the other hand, the still frames removed things like body language and tone, and autistic people were still judged more harshly. In fact, across the board, autistic people were judged harshly in a lot of different categories. I have a lot more to say, so I'll talk about the other 2 study designs and the implications of those in some other reels. In the second of the 3 studies, 12 autistic people and 16 neurotypical controls were filmed having casual conversations over things like, "Have you seen any new movies recently?" with someone that they're familiar with. While the effects of autistic people masking isn't mentioned directly in any of these studies, it is important to note that because these conversations were with people they're familiar with, we could imply that they might be more comfortable or less masking in this particular study. Researchers then got 10 randomized still frames, throwing out the blurry ones, and had 37 people rate all the participants along 3 different things. Using a sliding scale to make judgments in a matter of seconds, people were asked to answer 3 different questions. How socially awkward is this person? How approachable is this person? And would I see myself being friends with this person? In this study, autistic people were perceived as being more socially awkward, less approachable, and people were less interested in being their friends. What was more interesting is they wanted to test to see if these assumptions persisted after repeat exposures. And what researchers found is after repeat exposures, these negative first impressions didn't soften, but stayed consistent. Because these split-second negative and persistent first impressions are being made from still frames instead of audio or video, it suggests that autistic people are dealing with prejudice independent of their social skills. In the third and final research project, referenced in this paper, evaluating whether or not neurotypical people were more likely to have prejudice in the first impressions of autistic people, they filmed 14 autistic people recounting times when they felt happiness, surprise, anger, and fear. They then took the best summaries they could of those videos that expressed those feelings within the autistic people and the neurotypical controls who were asked to do the same thing. And then they asked people to, on a sliding scale of 1 to 100, rate them in 5 different ways. When people were asked to judge these short video clips across a range of emotions, they assumed that autistic people were less likely to start a conversation, have friends, or get along well with others. They also assumed that they probably spent more time alone and were more socially awkward. So as I summarize the 3rd video in this series going over this particular paper, I want to talk about what this paper did well, what they could have improved upon, and the kinds of questions I would ask if I were in the researcher's shoes or moving forward. This study did a really good job at reframing the concept of social impairment not necessarily being an autistic thing, but being a difference between the 2 neurotypes. But nowhere in the study did I see them mentioning nonverbal or non-speaking autistics, even though they did have a range of cognitive abilities. They also failed to explore whether or not masking was impacting these dynamics and almost exclusively studied men. In fact, at one point, they only had men evaluating men and women evaluating women, which is very limiting. More thoughts are in the caption.